Welcome to the Thrive podcast with the Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church.
How does your faith kind of play into it, or does it play into it?
What can be done about it? When I say the church, I'm talking about evangelical white Christians and the black folk who attend their churches. Hello, welcome to the Thrive podcast with the Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church. I'm Fred Jeff Smith, pastor of Shiloh, and I'm very happy that you chose to spend this time with us, whether you are viewing this on YouTube or listening to it on iTunes, Spotify, or Amazon. We're so very grateful for your presence here with us. We always invite you to send us your concerns, your comments. You can reach me at fredjeffsmith@cox.net, Fred Jeff Smith at cox.net. Let us know how we are doing or what we can do to make this better for you. I'm extremely happy to welcome back to the Thrive podcast Metro Councilwoman Erika Green. She's the representative for District 5 on our Metro Council, and she is here running as a candidate for Family Court Judge Division B. Councilwoman Green, thank you so much for taking the time to come and share with us.
Thank you for having me, Pastor Smith. It's always a joy to be back in Shiloh.
Well, thank you, ma'am.
And South Baton Rouge.
Thank you. So, how are things going with the Metro Council? I know we're going to talk about the judgeship, but I want to talk about the Metro Council for just a couple of things, if you don't mind.
Okay, no problem.
How things going?
So, I think we have a new council that is more open. I'm not going to use the word progressive, but open to having conversations about issues across the city. I think I don't want to say there's a learning curve. We have two council members that were previous council members in their respective areas, so they kind of understand the dynamic of budgets and city parish operations, and so I think they bring that knowledge in, and then you have two new African American council members who are go-getters, who are very issue based. I think they have their tunnel vision on what they want to see happen in the community and in our city, and they're pushing for those concerns. And you know, they have lots of energy now, so I think it's a good time for Baton Rouge to move some things forward.
I've been concerned about some of the issues that have appeared before the council recently. Mr. Hudson trying to redirect designated funds away from BREC and not BREC.
Not BREC. He chose
mosquito abatement
and the library system.
Yeah. Forgive me, I didn't mean BREC. Just a matter of time, they're going to get there. And I was delighted to see that did not happen. One of the concerns that I have, and I don't know if I shared this with you the last time you were here or not, but the entire tax system in Louisiana needs to be reviewed. First of all, the amount of money that he was talking about taking wouldn't have been a drop in the bucket to what's needed in order to do what he says you're going to do. So perhaps it was symbolism or anything like that, but it was defeated. You have any thoughts about that?
I think that it is a foreshadowing of where some council members' mindset may be. I actually think that designated taxes, and for my purposes, I'm a chairman of CAT's board, and we are seeking a tax renewal.
Yes. And
every week I'm looking at budgets to see if we're, with the property taxes that we're receiving and the revenue that we're receiving, it's enough. It's never enough. And I know that I'm going to speak on the library system. I know that they work very hard to utilize their budget to the max. They work hard to find additional funding. But anybody that has a dedicated tax is reason. it's needed. And so to say that, oh, we're going to take this percentage or this amount or this cents from that tax, and we know for certain that they can operate because they have a surplus. I'm no mathematician, but you're not considering all the things that organization does and the salaries that they include. A lot of your simple operating budgets are salaries.
Right.
And many people work in the library system.
Absolutely.
And mosquito abatement does a lot for the community. As people don't know, they have free services that they offer. I think that there needs to be a conversation, but I don't think you just specifically say we're going to take it for drainage. And it's drainage. And again, what I said at the meeting was that you are still forgetting that there's Zachary and Central Baker that are receiving that dedicated funding. We won't control what they do with the money when they get it sent to them after we transfer it over. You would hope that they will use it for drainage. So you're still doing a false narrative and telling people and telling the citizens that this is all going to go to drainage. And you're doing a false narrative when you're not stating how much money is going to drainage. We've approved pretty much on every council agenda, the last three council agendas, money for the drainage system. And again, it's some of it is federal funding, so it's a one-time, cash out. But there needs to be other conversations about manpower and employment.
We all know, we see it on the national news every night, the polarization that exists in national politics. Is it as polarizing in local politics? Is there polarization within the Metro Council?
I mean, we're no St. Tammany, so we're no Ascension. I'm not getting a car key, so I don't know if it's polarized. I think the last guard was very much along the lines, and they knew what the agenda items were for their I don't want to say side party for their party. They stuck with it. They ran with it. They utilized their state elected officials to push the local members to do what needs to be done. I think this is a new group, and they may not be following, all of the things, just kind of like the state legislature. The Black Caucus is now standing up for certain things,
right,
and not taking any changes in that. If you don't want to go through with it, then I think that we're holding strong as our block for our block. So I won't say it's fully polarized. I think that we're starting to engage a lot more people though. So the constituency may be more engaged to say we should be along this national agenda.
Census information just came out yesterday, the beginnings of it. I'm sure more details are going to be coming out in the coming
I'm sure
days.
happy I do research, because you come with it. Yes, the census came out. We are 46% gold.
Yes, and we are the largest parish in the state by populace. Not Orleans, not Jefferson, but East Baton Rouge. What exactly does it mean when you see that East Baton Rouge Parish is the largest? How does that translate into government? How does that translate into services? How does that translate into dollars?
So I just said this morning on another interview. I said that, for instance, the CATS tax, that the individuals that are riding and the ridership that we service are coming from a certain community, a disenfranchised community, and they have no other options. So if we are largely the largest populated area city in the state of Louisiana, we need public support. We need public transit. We need housing, affordable housing available, because everybody cannot afford, and we saw with the unemployment numbers and things like that, everybody can afford to provide their families the opportunity that they want. So yes, services will be impacted. And so we're going to have to look at if we are providing enough funding to stabilize a transit system, enough funding to stabilize, like I said, housing, or even the education system. Because, if that's the case, then what the general population says is, the norm, or the standard is going to have to change because there's a group of people that are missing many services, and that group, like if we don't have public transit, we're gonna have a lot of transportation issues. We have a number of infrastructure improvements happening, but traffic is gonna be really bad. And these people get older, and so I think that and assistance for they're doing the PEBT cards and things like that. Those numbers are going to be important to determine how are we feeding these children. And providing services for insurance. So we're gonna have some large numbers either way, but it's definitely gonna be affecting our funding sources and our agencies that provide services.
One of the things that a lot of people are looking at with regard to the census information is this whole idea of redistricting, and the state legislature is going to have to go through their process, but the Metro Council is going to have to undertake this whole idea of redistricting also, as well as the school board. The Metro Council is going to have their own demographer. The school board is going to have their own demographer. Could you sketch out for me what the process is for choosing a demographer, because it does make a difference who draws the map. I understand that ultimately, if it gets that far, the governor has the final say, but more often than not with the parish stuff, it stops with you all if there is agreement. So how do you go about choosing a demographer? How do you decide whether the demographer is local or out of state? How do you decide whether the demographer is conservative or moderate or liberal?
So the details about the demographer are very limited to my knowledge, but I will say that I know that we have started conversations with our parish attorney, with our council administrator, and asking her to look for demographers that we can start making some considerations on. And so I don't know how long that process will be, but you listed everything that we need to consider. I think even this was kind of brought up when the Alton Sterling case came and we were trying to find a mediator, right? You were trying to find somebody that could look at all sides and present a true, accurate recapitulation of the cost. Same thing here. You need someone that is going to look at everything. And I don't know if for elected officials, I remember listening to something and they were saying that where are we on certain districts? Do we want to have it 55% one majority of one race or things like that? And some elected officials that have been, our seasoned elected officials, they want to keep it the same way. They're fine with having a majority, but then sometimes you have to cut these districts. And so that's going to be important with your senior elected officials to understand that we need more representation. You already are in an area that is majority race or majority party, but we might have to cut one to get some more representation.
Right. I don't have a problem with 55-45. I have a problem with 85-15. I have a problem with 75-25 because either way, if it's 75 black, 25 white, or the reverse, whoever the office holder is, he's not going to listen to any opposition group that comes because they don't have enough power within that district to make any real difference. They can raise their heads, they can speak out, but when it comes time to vote, they can't really do anything. I would only hope, and I don't mind saying this now, I would only hope that we would have the integrity to draw more balanced districts on all levels, state, parish, local, so that even if we are not the majority, there is enough of us within that group that we have to be taken seriously. We have to be listened to. And
that's where that at-large seat kind of causes some concern, because if you represent if you are citywide seat, who will be the who will you be accountable to?
Yeah.
And so, and who's
I've never been in favor of an at-large seat. When they were talking about 2, when they dropped it down to 1, now I understand that they've pulled the whole at-large thing all together. Maybe it'll make a reappearance. I don't know. But if you have a parish-wide person on the Metro Council, that person is essentially the mayor.
I was going to say, in most counties, you are then the mayor pro tem because you receive the most votes.
Yes.
The most votes, and that means that's what everybody wants you to be the lead.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. Okay, I've bothered you enough about Metro Council stuff.
I enjoy it.
You're here because you have decided to become a candidate for a family court judge in Division B. Judge Woodruff White is stepping down, and you have decided to run for that seat. What made you decide that it was time to perhaps leave the council and move to the judiciary?
My legal career has been very important to me. I think in our last podcast, you said, "Do you really like being a lawyer?"
Right.
And I said without hesitation, I love practicing law. I have sustained my practice for the last 10 years, even while being a Metro Council member. I've kept my practice running, and I'm a solo practitioner, so it's me and the secretary that's in the office that runs my office, and so it's always been a heart's desire to be a judge, and when the opportunity presented itself, I knew that this was one that was the one that I felt that I should run for. My practice consists primarily of family law, also estate law. I started my career doing juvenile criminal law, and which most people don't go in juvenile court. But that afforded me to, after working in juvenile court and doing public interest work as a conflict public defender, I also had the opportunity to do child needed care cases. I worked for Southeast Legal Service as their conflict attorney in multiple parishes. So that's abuse cases and neglect cases. And if you know anything about family court, there's a large docket weekly with domestic abuse cases. And so there's a need for someone in that position to have that understanding and that experience. And then I also do adoptions. I'm a foster care adoption provider for the Department of Children and Family Services while I do everything else. And that was something that when I went in juvenile court, I presented a private adoption. The judge was very impressed and said, "You should probably do this as a contract attorney." So I connected with the Children and Family Services and been doing that ever since. That helps me understand and value the non-traditional family structure, the third parties, the grandparents, the aunties. Even we have families that are same-sex that are now raising children. And so when you understand that the nuclear family in retrospect is changing, then you can understand that when it's presented to you in your courtroom. And so all those things, I believe, help prepare me for the position to run for judgeship in family court. And it's a specialty court. We have to keep in mind this is a highly emotional place. This is dealing with children and families and people's money and assets. And so when you get into all of that, you have to have someone that has truly had that experience, but also someone that has also been connected to the community to understand the community that they represent. We just talked about the census, and knowing that we are a majority African American community, we need to have more black judges on the bench, but definitely need to have a judge on the bench that understands our community.
You mentioned adoptions. I imagine foster care falls into that realm as well. What's the word that keeps coming to my mind is backlog, and I don't want to use that with regard to children. What's the waiting list for children to be adopted in East Baton Rouge Parish? And I'm not asking for a specific number, but just give me an idea of what that looks like.
So when we started in the child in need of care space, if there's neglect or abuse that is verified within 72 hours, children are taken away from the home that they live in and put in a safe environment. And so that puts them in a foster care space in general. There's numerous, I want to say the First Lady of Louisiana is very adamant about pushing foster care and pushing individuals to be a part of it, because we have a limited number of foster care parents. And so that's for it, whether it's a temporary stay or for a permanent stay. Once that child's biological parent, if there's no reunification, then their rights are terminated. Then you have your permanent foster care options that turn into a permanent stay for those children. If you don't have places to put them, then we can't even get that child to a stable environment in a home for adoption purposes. But there are a number of single individuals that are starting to want to adopt, so that's helping defray the number. Those CASA volunteers are very important. We don't see that in family court, but you have to also remember family court, family law, and juvenile law is the children's handbook, children's code handbook, and they are dual in nature, because sometimes you will go to juvenile court to do transfers of custody and come back to family court to do the permanent custody. And so, back in the day, people used to go to child support court in juvenile court. So that code book covers all of those things. And even though there is a definite backlog of the individuals that need to do foster care or to be parents, foster care parents, I think that most importantly, we need to think about the third parties and the generational individuals that are stepping in to take care of children as well. So grandparents raising grandchildren and things like that. So there is other options than pushing children all the way to foster care to help defray. But that's more funding. When you put somebody in foster care, you have to pay till they reach 18. The government has to pay. And that's a lot. That's a lot of cost. And I always tell people, when we think about child support, as I've been campaigning, a lot of men want to talk to me, about child support. But I tell them that on the other side of this,
bet they do.
Yeah, on the other side of this, the conversation is the government can't afford to pay the medical expenses of children, because there's medical government-funded medical insurance. The government can't afford to pay child care for you. For children without some kind of supplement. So that is why the government said, I can't be the father for every child. We need to start holding people accountable, and that's where that child support conversation kind of evens out. The men don't like part of it, but it's also a government issue as well. I talked about it a lot.
Well, since you went to men and child support, I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked your opponent, who was here the other day. What is it about, and it's going to sound sexist, what is it about these women that they will not force these men to pay child support? They will not go through a court system and force them to pay child support. And I speak from a certain degree of experience, because I have people who come into this office all the time complaining that John ain't paying baby Jim's child support. Do you have a court order that says what he's supposed? No, I didn't do that. He told me he was gonna pay this, and he's 3 months behind, and I ain't got money to pay for all this. Why will women not avail themselves of the court system in order to enforce child support being paid? It's not alimony. It's for the child. It's not for you.
Sometimes you don't want to get caught up in the stereotype, right? The stereotypical woman that is trying to get money from a man who does not want to be held accountable. That's the first far-fetched answer. And then
Thank you for saying far-fetched. Okay.
Hey, I would say that's a far-fetched answer. The other answer is maybe they don't have the access and the finances to go through the private attorney situation, and the child support system may take too long, right? So I don't want to wait 4 months after going and filling out an application with a caseworker for you to put it on a docket. And then after those 4 months, we may not, I don't really know, I don't have interaction with him, I can't serve him. Then it's a whole year before he's ever brought into court. So some people are saying, I don't have the time to dedicate, but I also don't have the money. So I can't pay an attorney, and then I can't, I don't want to go through the process of going through it through the government assistance district attorney's office to move that forward. And then some of them say, well, you're not going to hold them accountable anyway. So I get a judgment, I have a child support obligation, and then I even he's in court, he knows all of this, and then he still chooses not to pay. And then the court system doesn't hold him responsible. The men will say the opposite, that the court system only holds the men responsible and doesn't hold women responsible on the reverse. I think it is a case-by-case situation on why people choose not to go for child support. On the reverse is that we have very large dockets in child support court that's handled every week. In every courtroom, there's a child support docket, and they don't leave court till 5 o'clock. And these are many of them are employed women, employed men, grandparents that are seeking assistance from the biological parents. And so I think that child support is definitely on one side a hard conversation just in the community, and I'm gonna say in the Black community. I don't think that the other community has any problem with doing that, but I think that it's just a hard conversation on both sides.
As a judge, a prospective judge who would have to deal with this on a regular basis, what's your response? I imagine a lot of it has to do with education. Before you get into this situation, so that you know what you're doing before you ever arrive in a courtroom. But what do you see as your role as a judge in helping to remedy this problem?
You have a dual role. So you have the opportunity to participate in policy. You can go to the legislature and advocate and be on committees. That's one thing Woodruff White did well. She was a part of the policy making of some of the things that you see now in law, which is the child support worksheet and the obligation and how they come up with it. As the trier of fact, my role is to listen and hear what is being presented to determine if the income is calculated or imputed in the correct manner. And sometimes for certain communities, everybody is working jobs differently, right? And so maybe you have to look at check stubs, and some people don't have check stubs. And I think that's why you have to use a case-by-case basis. You have to remember, judges do have some discretion. And you do the set obligation, and then they have discretion to hear considerations of multiple children in the household, to hear your work schedule and how that may play into how much you make and what the other party may make. And so I think sometimes in court people don't feel that they are being listened to or heard. And then on the other side, I'm going to keep giving both sides, scale of justice. You got to come on both sides of the you have to realize that when we put our people in the cycle of judgments with arrearages and things like that, they don't ever have the opportunity to come out of it, because now you are already in this amount in arrearages, and you have to pay the if you have to pay the court and the attorney that brought that case or the contempt, that's putting them at a disadvantage if they can't go to work if they get arrested. So you have to try to find options for the obligor to make the payments and to keep them working and keep them employed. And so I think that's my job, to hear all of that and make sure that we're imputing it correctly, make sure that we understand. And now the thing that they do in family court is that they try to put you in the courtroom so that all of your children are in the same courtroom. So the judge automatically remembers you had another child because the files are in the same courtroom now. And I think that's something that they did right by making sure that you consolidate these cases and you make sure that if he has a case, all of his cases kind of come through the same judge. If the jurisdictionally can happen, you put them through that same judge, and then that judge can not take your word for it, but know that he did come last week. And then we also live in an age where people are getting, remarried, and that has to be considered as well. If you are remarrying, the law says that the first child wins, right? So the first child to put you on child support is the one that gets the most money, but then the judge has the discretion to kind of listen to the second child support obligation and bring a judgment that represents that all of the things that goes on in your life.
So it's not just a cut and dry formula.
It is a cut and dry formula.
Okay.
But then you have discretion at the end if it is not if it's not detrimental to either side. And people come in, let's not paint the picture that everyone comes in here fighting. People come in and agree to. They agree to certain amounts that are deviations or lower amounts than what that cut and dry formula produces. And so sometimes judges don't take that. They will say that, I think that's too low, or have you considered this? And so I think that a judge has to go by the law, which is that cut and dry formula, encourage attorneys to go by the law, encourage the people that are coming for them. But then also they can take into consideration some other things.
When it comes to things like deaths and successions, does that come into the family court, or does that go into a different court?
That's civil. That's a civil matter, so it goes into other courts. But we're having a lot of deaths with younger people now, and so a lot of people that have been in our community acknowledging children at family functions and things like that. And then dad dies for whatever reason, or mom dies for whatever reason. Now we do bring estate cases just for the purpose of establishing paternity, so that child can receive from the parent
benefits.
Benefits.
Okay.
I mean, you probably didn't even know this. The Alton Sterling case came through family court.
No, I didn't know that.
Because they had to establish paternity, because some of the children were acknowledged. They just didn't have birth certificate signing and paternity tests.
Okay.
So that stuff that does come through family court.
Okay. With regard to your current position as Metro Councilwoman for District 5, should you be successful in becoming a judge, what happens to that seat? I know it sounds like a civics class, but I just think it bears bringing up.
The seat becomes vacant, and at that time, depending on the time frame that a letter because I cannot hold dual office. So depending on the time that the letter goes out, it will force an election, kind of the same thing that happened in this seat. It forces an election to be called. And then there's a time period for maybe an appointment. Depending on when that election is called, typically the law currently says with the plan of government that we can appoint if they have a year or more left in that term. But the new plan of government change would have said you have to appoint someone within 20 days. And so I don't know where I fit on if it should be a quicker appointment or not, but it just depends on when that election is called. And then individuals will have the opportunity. Shauna, Councilwoman Banks, changed the process. So now you have to submit resumes if you want the appointment seat. And then the council as a whole will vote on the appointment.
Okay. Making the move to the judiciary from being a legislator, which is what a council person primarily is, does that preclude you from engaging in other advocacy in the community? Because I know that you're an advocate outside of your responsibilities as a Metro Council person.
There are judicial canons that limit a judge in the things that they can do and issue-based topics. But I would say our judiciary in Baton Rouge has kept themselves involved in issues, and they've come to the Metro Council to advocate and things of that nature. And so I believe that my heart is that I will still have the ability to help my community in whatever form, whether it's advocacy, but there is some limits that all judges have through the judicial canons.
Well, let's talk about Baton Rouge moving forward. You made mention of the fact that we could stand to have more African American judges in our parish, and I certainly agree with that. Somebody might be listening saying, well, what difference does it make whether the judge is black or white or well, let me start by asking this question. What's your opinion about judges running for office versus judges being appointed to their seats?
I think the same as with the council seat or any other elected position. I think that the city and the people that you represent should be able to elect you. There are options for appointments and for judge seats and things of that nature. We're looking at all these attorney generals that are being appointed, and assistant attorney generals. And we're seeing that there's even federal appointment options for judges. So there's still a mechanism to keep it from being a political seat, but you need to have somebody that represents the people that they are there for. And so if you have to campaign for it, I say go for it. There are rules and ways to hold limits on judges, so that even afterwards, even involvement in organizations and things like that, you're limited just because that case might come in front of you, or someone's case may come in front of you. But I definitely think that it should be an elected position. I definitely think that we need representation that looks like the city that we are in. And it may be hard to hear that for some people, but it's just changing. I look at my elected counterparts in other cities, and they say that when we come to Baton Rouge, it just looks like y'all have a lot of elected officials that are black. They are in their cities with 1 or 2 black elected officials, and it's hard. So I'm happy to know that we have a cohort of black elected officials here.
Well, one of the things you can say to your white counterparts is nobody asked y'all to leave. You left on your own. I was looking at the census data this morning. Ascension Parish, Livingston Parish, Iberville Parish, West Baton Rouge Parish. Nobody asked y'all to go. No, even all the way out to St. Helena Parish. Nobody asked y'all to leave. Y'all chose to leave on your own. I feel the same way, by the way, about police officers. If you want to work for the city of Baton Rouge, I believe there should be a residency requirement that says that you live at least within the parish of East Baton Rouge. Nobody, if you want to live in Livingston, then go work for Denham Springs. If you want to live in Ascension, then go work for Gonzales. But why should you be able to live in these places and say that you are a public servant of this community, and yet you have no stake in this community? Your family has no stake in this community. Your children don't go to school in this community. I find that problematic.
You become disconnected, Even in the family court, a lot of the evidence that is being produced, I'll give you a good example. There was a conversation about school choice in a hearing that I was having. Like, you can literally file for school choice in family court. If you have a judge who has no connection to the school system, and has not, you don't know where the school is they're talking about. You literally are depending on attorneys to present to you if it's a good school or a bad school. And then you are dependent on parents who may not be as involved or who are uber involved, in the system to determine, even if it's a private school or not, how do you determine which school is better for that particular child? And so if you are disconnected from that, and even to the extent of, I had a situation where they didn't even know that the virtual school option for EBR schools was not an option anymore, and school started Wednesday.
Right.
And so you shouldn't have to call in for every, or be totally dependent on what's presented to you in court. Now, you have to use what they present, because if they don't present it, then you can't really, but you can take into account that I know that school struggles, or I know that this school is, has these different resources to help this family. And so I think that you do have to have some representation of the people you're in front of, because that's going to be, hard. And even if like I said, you do have to utilize what's presented to you. So if the attorneys didn't present that information, but you still have to bring in the law and compare it to the evidence that was presented and weigh that. But you got to have some experiences in this, right? And so I think that is the same for a judge. You have to come in with some level of connectivity.
Yeah, I totally agree. I know that you're running for a judgeship, for family court judge, but I wanted to ask your opinion as a prospective judge about the way that the East Baton Rouge Parish school system is approaching COVID right now. Masking, social distancing, vaccinations, things of that sort. Do you think that we're doing a good job?
So I think that I have a brother that's a teacher, been teaching for 17 years, so we'll hold that there. So I have some understanding of that. I think that what you have to start with is that the numbers came out as well, that virtual school option was not helping the vast majority of the kids. They were low performing. Put them at who was virtual and who wasn't. They were the lower performing group. And that's a whole nother conversation about access to resources and support systems. And so that's the first start. So that there had to be some kind of push that they go back to school. I think that having mask mandates in schools is the best way to protect children and educators. We have not required vaccinations for the educators, so parents are concerned. There are a number of parents that are very upset that there's only one virtual option, so they can't even, if they don't want to send their child to school, they can't protect their children. I think the social distancing depends on the school, because if we're already overpopulated, then the school and that classroom number is going to be large, and you can space them out, but it's still a large number of students in class. I think this is one of those trial by error things. You got to see how it's going to work. And so I think what he did, superintendent did, was what he felt was best. I don't know if it's best practices for schools across America, but like I said, we're not fighting people at the front door. Most parents are abiding by the guidelines and sending their kids with masks, and so that's all you can hope for. I think so. The standard is there.
Have you had a conversation with the superintendent?
I have.
Okay. And
I'm still learning. I'm actually asking my friends that are educators, that are administration. Some of them are in administration positions, and it started off negative, and most of them are saying, I feel that he may be doing a better job. I think we have a school year to look at to see what happens. It's a lot of transition over there.
Yeah. I'd really like the opportunity to have a conversation with the school superintendent. We've tried, and we haven't been able to make that happen. And so next time you talk to the
Sure
school
will.
superintendent,
Sure
would you
will.
let him know that there's a whole swath of pastors who are of African American persuasion who would like to be able to sit down and talk with him about things, because he says things like, we have groups, and I want to know what groups he's met with, because I'm quite confident about the groups that he has not met with. So please feel free to share that with
will
him
pass the message on.
at your convenience.
Yeah, we'll pass the message on.
Your how are things going in Gloryland?
Gloryland is operated. We are hybrid.
Are you all in? Or
Hybrid.
You're hybrid. Okay.
We're hybrid. So inside, they are having services every Sunday, and then there's still the option to watch it virtually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we did have a summer camp this summer.
Good.
And so
Hopefully there were very few outbreaks.
Not even. Yeah. I think we manned that. They were able to watch that pretty good. I applaud the administrators and the camp counselors that worked with that.
So your seat comes up in October?
October 9th, September 25th through October 2nd is early voting.
Early voting, okay.
I encourage people to remember that the 6 years that I have served as a public servant, I have made sure that I connected with the community, and also have done policy work that has helped the community, but also still worked in my position as a lawyer for 10 years and during that 6 years. And so I made sure that I have prepared myself by doing contract work. I didn't say that I was also an adjunct professor for 5 semesters at the Law Center.
Okay.
So I mentor. I really mentor young people, law students, and I think that lawyers would appreciate that as well.
Certainly.
My colleagues are more than supportive, and I think that just want people to know that this is a larger district than my current district, and so I need the support of many that usually don't get the opportunity to vote for me.
Could you give me the boundaries of your district, please?
I like to say we start in South Baton Rouge and we go down the river. So we go through Spanish Town, Beauregard, and then we go to North Baton Rouge with this Gus Young Eden Park, Fairfields area. Mm-hmm. We go into Glen Oaks and Marydale, anything on Plank Road. Mm-hmm. We hit all the way to Scenic. So we hit Scotlandville as well as Baker, and we have a small segment of Zachary. It is a large district.
It is a large district.
Yep. Yeah. A very large district, but I'm a true native of Baton Rouge. My family is from all these areas, and so I haven't just stayed in my district the whole time I've been in service.
Floor is yours. Say whatever you'd like to say before we close this out.
What I would like to say is that this seat is one that we should take seriously, because many times people think judges, they want to make sure they know who the criminal court judge is or the civil court judge for whatever reason. But this is the one that touches on families. This is the one that will affect the children that are growing up in the area, and this is the one that many people don't like to come to, but they need to know that they're being heard, and it's a specialty court. And so when we think about things like the domestic violence that's going on in the community, we think about child support, custody, and we think about community property, that most times that conversation is not had. You want to make sure that there is someone there that has explored opportunity in not just working in their office, but also has worked in different agencies. I've named throughout this podcast a number of agencies that I've worked for. I am right now an impartial hearing officer for Louisiana Workforce Commission with rehabilitation. And so I have been a trier of fact, but I also have worked in public interest work for my entire career. So I understand the needs of our community. I'm an experienced attorney and one dedicated to helping both the individuals that come before me and listen to the attorneys that come before me as well. And so I just like the opportunity to lead in this role, and I believe that this is where God is moving me to. Some will be upset, but I believe I've served my community well, and they'll be happy to see me in another position.
Councilwoman Erika Green, thank you so much for taking the time to come and share with us today. We wish you well in your future endeavor. Thank you for viewing. Thank you for listening. We'll be back again next time.